So, Mark, tell me, what is the hell with this about?
Well, it's all about that movie you've always wanted to force your friends to watch, only you and I are doing it on a much larger scale.
So basically, it's a podcast about reaching that point when you just say, you know what, the hell with this. We're going to watch that damn movie finally, and you're just going to have to sit and talk to me about it.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
So we're going to talk about other stuff?
Sure, we'll save the spoiler-free talk for the beginning of each episode because we're not fascists, we're not communists. Some people may not want to sit with us for an entire movie. What are we going to do, force them to watch something?
Well, no, but I still get to force you to watch something with me, right?
Fine.
Has anyone ever told you sound like you're reading from a script?
All the time, pal.
So, Mark.
What?
Tell me, what's your first memory of having seen a Star Wars movie?
Boy, I don't actually have a very early memory of seeing the movie, but I remember having the toys.
Yeah.
Like, what, 83 is when Jedi came out?
Yeah,
I was only born
83.
in 82, so they were already a little before my time. I would have only caught them if they were on TV or if we had the VHS. And
you wouldn't have had a VHS in 82, probably.
No, I mean, well, I was 0 years old in 82.
Exactly.
So, fast forward to 87, I'm sure we had a VCR, but I don't know if we had those movies. Maybe somebody had recorded it off of TV one time, because I think we did have them, but I was not obsessed with Star Wars. I didn't love Star Wars until the 90s, when the resurgence kind of came back, and they were making the new action figures, and they made the special edition, of course.
Sure.
And it became a phenomenon. And then I kind of I had seen all the movies, and I knew I'd liked them, but that's when I really went, amazing, Star Wars is coming back. But I really don't even know what my first memory of Star Wars is. I can think of my first memory of Spaceballs.
Really?
Yeah, but not Star Wars.
About what year was that?
That was probably 88 or 89. My cousins always loved that movie, so we would always be watching Spaceballs when they visited.
Because I feel like one of the first things that we connected on early on was you had sent me a script for a Star Wars fan film that you had written.
Why are you telling everybody this?
That was it was a detective story or something.
Yeah, like that. I wanted it to be. It wasn't all that great.
And that's how I always kind of knew you as someone. Even your avatar was basically Secret Agent 007.
Yeah.
That was your old name, right?
Yeah.
And you had very noir. You had the top hat. You had the
top hat.
Top hat. Sorry.
Fedora. And the trench coat.
Trench coat. Hiding around a corner.
I like all that old school detective stuff.
And you had found a way to kind of turn it into a Star Wars script.
Yeah. And then I kind of went no one's ever gonna fucking make this. I should just make it my own science fiction story.
Right. Well, it was. I don't know why you always self-defeated yourself on that one, because I was like, well, why don't you just finish it? Because I actually enjoyed what you were doing.
Yeah, I should go back. I don't know. They had a lot of problems.
My first Star Wars, I think the toys. Yeah, I think I probably played with the toys before I really understood what I was playing with. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember having the Han Solo action figure, and he had a different name. I didn't call him Han Solo, so I don't know. We were doing other little things with the Star Wars figures, but not letting them be Star Wars characters.
Yeah, I seem to remember getting that first set of Star Wars figures that came in the Vader head, or was it a Vader head, or what was it?
Yeah, it was a big folding case.
Yeah, and that was...
I think that the case
sold,
came separately.
And it was sold before they were actually out. You were sold the promise of it.
Okay.
It was pre-selling you.
Yeah.
We can't produce this all by Christmas, but
here's this case that
here's a thing that promises to get later on.
Yeah.
And but this was all kind of in my memory. This all happened before I could really remember, because I was 2 months old when Empire Strikes Back came out, and I'm pretty sure that we went to see Return of the Jedi at a drive-in theater. But it's kind of one of those foggy memories where you don't have a time and a place for it. You just remember walking along the street from having seen Return of the Jedi in a drive-in outdoor theater kind of type thing. And that's kind of my recollection. Plus, like all my toys, we were living in Colorado in 1984 in a cabin in the woods, which I've been to many times since then, our family cabin.
Yeah.
And it was like one of the worst snows in, I don't know how many years. It was bad. It was like 5 or 6 feet of snow outside of the house. Shit. And there's still pictures of me, like, literally the snow level is like over my head by quite a considerable amount. When I was like 4 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
But and all my Star Wars toys that I had left there in the cabin had all disappeared. And a lot of this is hearsay, what I heard from my mother and father.
Did some motherfucker still sell your Star Wars toys?
There was nobody up there to sell my Star Wars toys. We found them, what was left of them, underneath the paneling of the wood floors, and the squirrels and chipmunks and the pack rats we had all kinds of random. I don't think we had rats, but we had
rodents,
like bigger rodents who would sneak in and grab them and take them underneath.
Why?
And chew on them.
Why would they do that?
There was like this cannibal squirrel that lived in the vicinity of the place, and I think it lived underneath the house. And I still have some of what was left of that set of figurines. Like, I still have some of them, and their legs are chewed off.
Yeah.
Their arms are chewed off. The head's gone. So I still have some of the original collection that my mom said I had every single one, or whatever. But, which would have been a gold mine for a child.
Yeah.
But it was
and
too
a literal gold mine these days.
Nowadays. But, now they're all destroyed, and Yoda's cane has been eaten. But
that's so sad.
I guess Yoda came out much later. But maybe. It was interesting. Like, the cannibal, I call it the cannibal squirrel, because we found like we kept hearing all these whining noises underneath the house, and we looked, and the squirrel had been freezing to death so much that it ate the faces off of its babies.
Oh, well, I think a lot of rodents do that.
Yeah.
Like hamsters will eat their own babies if you leave them in the same cage.
I just remember these faceless. I had nightmares about the faceless tiny little baby squirrels.
Why just the faces? Nothing else.
Well, it's the same thing. I was watching the Blue Planet or whatever the other day, and they were talking about killer whales like cornering these giant blue whales or whatever, and they'll corner and eventually drown the smaller ones.
Wow.
Yeah, they actually just jump on top of them and keep them under the water so that they can't breathe until they get so tired, and then all they do is eat the face.
What the fuck?
The killer whales will just run up, eat the face, and I don't know, just because it's the easiest thing to eat.
Maybe
because they can't exactly stretch their mouth. It's like eating a giant hamburger. You can't get your mouth around the entire thing.
Yeah,
but you can at least chew around.
And they don't have thumbs, so they can't like pull open the rest of it.
So just chew the head off, right? Basically, that's what they do. Maybe that's why. Maybe they're just like, I don't like your stupid face. So
nature is fucking disgusting.
Yeah. Anyway, we're a little tangent, but that was my intro to the Star Wars universe, and it kind of, I think you're right, like the whole VHS thing, and back in the day when you couldn't just see a movie on demand like you can now, and everything is so oversaturated that people just don't care about the movie theater, the experience of it anymore. And this, of course, is the Tuesday before The Last Jedi comes out when this releases. We're gonna kind of celebrate today by choosing a movie that we both have seen.
We do that every once in a while.
Adore, and it kind of I don't even think I realized it until this conversation, is how much it adopts the sensibilities of your love for detective stories
Wait, you didn't realize that?
Well,
That's the whole point.
but I don't think I had tied. I mean, I don't think I had tied together the fact that we chose to do a Rian Johnson movie this week, and his first movie being Brick, which is an amazing,
hell of a first effort.
High school film,
high school crime movie.
High school crime movie that's set in a very noir style with basically its own form of dialogue.
Yeah, it's making up its own slang.
Yeah. And it does it.
Some of it's borrowed from like old Raymond Chandler novels and Sam Spade, all that stuff.
And it came out of nowhere, really.
Yeah, was it at Sundance or something?
Yeah, I think it.
I remember seeing a poster for it, and the only name I recognized on it was Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah,
and
who had been basically gone from planet Earth since he had been in.
Third Rock from the Sun?
He had disappeared from the planet for 10 years, it felt like.
I thought, he was in 10 Things I Hate About You, wasn't he?
That's true.
He was doing a few things here and there, but he wasn't the huge star that he is now.
I think he still had that brand of, he's just a child star.
Uh-huh.
And it takes a lot for somebody to get past that, especially him, because he was such a goofy child star.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for someone to kind of build and burgeon into someone who's not bitter about their past. And he seems like very,
He's stayed very busy. I think that's what helps.
Yeah.
He's got his own show, his own website, hit record.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a very creative guy. He's always working on something.
I suppose for people who aren't used to... I guess they wouldn't be listening to this podcast if they weren't interested in movies beyond just seeing a movie. But Rian Johnson is the director of The Last Jedi. And he's only made 3 movies to date. Brick, Brothers Bloom, which was another one I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Looper, which is
what got him his Star Wars job.
Yeah. Although, according to Kathleen Kennedy, when she was choosing directors, I guess... I don't know if I feel like she said she hadn't seen it or she hadn't even thought about him.
Oh.
But for some reason she read on a list of people that were, when the internet said, here's the list of directors you guys should hire for Star Wars.
They actually paid attention?
They actually looked at it and they said, well, let's look at this guy.
Well, I haven't seen Breaking Bad at all, but apparently he did a couple episodes or maybe just one episode of that.
2 or 3.
Okay. Apparently the fans thought his episodes were the best of the whole show.
Which is funny because I actually did not like the first episode that he did, the Fly episode.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen it. Show.
Okay, yeah. You're talking to a brick wall.
The last 1 or 2. I feel like he did more than 2. At the very end when he did an episode or 2, that was Ozymandias or whatever that episode was. That's
the one I've heard of.
Best
definitely
episodes of the whole series, and it was like right at the end of the series.
And I guess I work in TV. You do too. Mm-hmm. TV shows usually don't allow for a lot of directorial interpretation.
Right.
You have the world of the show, and the job of the director in TV is to wrangle, herd all of the cats to make the newest episode. But the DP is there to make sure that it's going to look the same as every other episode.
Mm-hmm.
It fits in. The writers are there to do their thing. And the director is it's more of a technical job, trying to get performances out of people sometimes. But even then, I've noticed in TV, the actors don't want that much direction because
that's what
it's their characters.
You run into a case then where the director's like, fuck you, don't tell me what this character has to do.
Yeah.
Like, I've lived with this character. And that, to me, inherently is part of the problem with TV coming in from an outsider coming in. But at the same time, the flip side argument to that is that was, as far as the Fly episode of Breaking Bad was concerned,
mm-hmm.
my problem when I remember when I was watching it, I was a big fan of Rian Johnson's at the time, but it did feel different considerably than the rest of the show had up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was people do love that episode, and it's good. It was really well done, but it didn't feel like it was part of that universe, or it was so much. It was its own story.
Too much.
It was its own story, and it was literally trapped in one location.
Oh, it was a bottle episode.
And
you know what that is?
What?
A bottle episode.
Well, now I know it's a bottle episode.
When you put it all in like one location, that's the bottle. You can't leave the bottle.
I say that, but I actually don't really remember much outside of it. But I believe that they were trapped in a building.
Yeah,
if I can remember correctly.
Well, that's a running problem with that type of episode. Like they write it sometimes as a challenge, like, can we make this interesting when it's just in one location, or they do it for a budgetary reason, where we're going to be inside this party bus for the entire episode.
Right.
That happened on Crazy X. And sometimes because you're not seeing the places you usually do on the show, it feels way, way different.
Right.
Like it is a different universe. It's a much smaller universe now. Mm-hmm. But it's temporary, at least. I
mean, the clearest thing of all, of course, is that there's a definitive style to that episode. You know, in the sense that Brick is extremely stylistic.
Yeah.
I think
in a low budget sense.
Yeah, I think Brick cost $500,000 in independent numbers. You know, whatever that might end up being.
I had heard 100,000.
That would not surprise me. But the 100,000 bloomed into, you know, when they're trying to sell the movie.
I'm
sure you got the agencies saying, "Oh no, they spent 500,000." You know.
Yeah, well, I'm sure with all the post work that always goes into a feature film,
right?
When it's getting shown in real theaters, I'm sure they had to do so much sound work. But as far as I know,
sure that was on top. Like Universal might have spent an additional couple million just to promote the movie and get it out there, because it did get a pretty sizable release.
Yeah. As far as I know, the production budget was $100,000. That's what they made and shot the movie with, which ain't much, but it was enough.
I remember when I was finishing Apocalypse in California, and I felt like an utter failure for having made the movie and spent some of my family's money on it, and nobody saw it basically.
No.
And I was broke by the time the movie was done, so there was no chance of it getting out into the world, especially being a B cult movie. And I had been frequenting the message boards on Rian Johnson's website, and I made a post, and I talked about like had the struggles I had and like all this stuff, and Ryan had replied to it, and see, he was talking about how after the first time they screened Brick for his family and all these people who
was everybody demanding their money back,
who wouldn't necessarily go see this kind of quirky, it is quirky, kind of film. He said he felt like an absolute failure at life, and he thought he had wasted basically all their money. And he said he felt like his career was over the moment he screened it for the first time. God. The rough cut, because the rough cut
it's always too a disaster, long, and it doesn't have the finished sound and all that.
Yeah. So my takeaway is, from that, I mean, this movie obviously it has some technical issues. I think, it's obvious that it's a low budget film.
Yeah.
But it's also obvious that there's an immense amount of technical genius.
Yes.
That comes from someone who clearly knows what they're doing. And Ryan, the biggest thing I've gathered about the guy himself and his works is how intensely passionate he is about the history of filmmaking. And like how films were made and how the techniques have changed over the years. And
I think he's just as passionate about storytelling in general.
Yeah.
Because the reason the way he came up with Brick, if I recall correctly, he wrote the whole movie as a novel first. And he put that up on his website for people to download.
It's still there, yeah.
I read that thing. But he wrote it basically in the style of one of these old, like, pulpy crime writer guys who would crank out these detective stories. So I think he just he felt passionate enough about it to see it all the way through to being a real movie, and it really was just like a love letter to film noir.
Mm-hmm.
That was the whole point. He just didn't. I don't know.
I mean, and that's what it feels like. It feels like a love letter to noir.
Yeah,
And
it's not like it's a really good story. I think.
Yeah.
It's very involving, good characters, but it is just sort of mimicking all this stuff that came before, but he put it in this new package for a modern audience. And that's what's brilliant about it. It feels new, but it's really old.
Right.
It's extremely old.
Well, it's been a while since I've seen the movie. I'm looking forward to revisiting
too.
it. And we'll see you on the other side.
All right, bye.
Brendan,
Emily?
I really screwed up.
Screwed up how?
The brick.
What?
I didn't know it was bad, but the pin's on it now. You gotta help me.
Slow down now. This isn't good. No. Emily said words I didn't know. Tell me if they catch.
Brick?
No. Tug?
Tug might be a drink, like milk and vodka.
Pin?
You know the kingpin.
Dope runner, right?
Big time. What are you gonna do?
She asked for my help. I just want to know she's okay.
So what's first?
I'm gonna start shaking things up.
So you didn't know this boy?
No, sir. Never seen him.
And he just hit you.
He asked for my lunch money first. Good thing I brown bagged it. You're coming into a certain situation. It's twisted. I'm looking for Emily.
You left her.
Yeah, I did.
You better be sure you want to know what you want to know.
Complicated. Everyone's got their thing.
When the upper crust does shady deeds, they've got symbols so they can tell each other without word getting around.
Coffee and pie.
Coffee and pie? Oh, my.
Keep up with me now.
You got a cigarette?
I don't smoke.
I've seen you smoke.
I don't smoke cigarettes.
I thought we had orange juice. I'm sorry.
Water's fine, ma'am. Thanks.
Oh, wait a minute. We have apple juice. It's country style.
If I get to the bottom, whatever this is,
What do you want?
just to see you sweat.
And it gets too hot. You got a discipline issue with me? Write me up or suspend me.
I see that you're trying to help her. And I don't know anybody who would do that for me.
You are dangerous. I set out to know, put her on the spot. And put her in front of the gun. There's not much chance of coming out clean.
I first time I became aware of Rian Johnson was from Brick.
Yeah, me too.
And I don't remember if I feel like it might have been something you just I don't know, we might have discovered it kind of at the same time because we were living together. Or maybe it was like right before we moved in together. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I remember the first time I saw this, it was a screening at Fox.
Really? Well, I remember our roommate, Nick, who we've talked about many a time on the podcast.
We love Nick. We can't get over Nick.
Yeah, we can't get over him.
Nick, we miss you, man.
We miss you, dude. Anyway, he had done an audition for Brothers Bloom, I think. Or no, he had received the script from his manager or something.
Yeah.
And you had both read it
Yeah.
and really liked it. Thought it was like there's no way Rian Johnson could pull it off because it was such like an epic script, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it seemed I mean, really in the end it turned out as it was written.
Yeah.
But it was like globe-trotting and all
That was
this shit.
that was Rian Johnson just laughing at you like, yeah, this will teach you to think with a small mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was all around kind of the same time, and Brothers Bloom didn't. It took a few more years for him to get it made.
Mm-hmm.
Another movie that I loved that came out before Brick, called May, was directed by Lucky McKee.
And he was the editor, Ryan.
And Rian Johnson, I later kind of found out, was the editor, of that. So really the first thing I saw of his was May. Because his fingerprints, I don't want to say anything about the career of Lucky McKee, but that was by far and away his best movie. And now, having seen Ryan's trajectory, I wondered how much, because you and I both know how much power editing has over the filmmaking process.
Yeah.
And like you can
shoot a brilliant movie and still fuck it up in the editing
It's going to
room.
just be terrible if you have a terrible editor that cuts it,
Yeah.
But if you have somebody in there who understands story and can create moments out of nothing.
Yeah.
Literally, there's scenes where you're like, oh, we missed something there, but you take a flubbed take and somehow, just because it feels natural, you're able to craft it into something that actually works.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that in Brick.
Yeah.
Like making the moments out of nothing.
Nothing.
Like using the tail end of takes and stuff like that.
Well, and I wondered
when
if that was
he's feeling
on
disoriented.
Purpose, yeah.
And when he's getting like punched out, they're shooting like they're intercutting like 1 or 2 frames of like just filming the sun.
Right.
That comes from a few seconds after.
But there's also signs that Ryan knew exactly what he was doing, because you see that there's a moment like that later on where Nora Zehetner's character appears. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's, I think, getting the shit beat out of him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's on the floor, and we see the door open, and Nora Zehetner appears, and then Joseph Gordon-Levitt gets hit in the face again or something, and it does a little flash frame of her standing there still, and there's a spotlight.
There's like a huge spotlight
on her, which is very similar to those edits you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But this was very carefully set up on set, so there's definitely, but that kind of goes with what my point is, that Rian Johnson understands editing, and I still in my gut feel that the best technical directors understand editing before they understand direction, because you understand how something's going to cut, and so you know how to kind of shoot it.
And to bring David Fincher into this once again, because we talk about him at least every other episode.
Yeah, right.
I read an interview with him, and he was kind of explaining why he has been known to do a lot of takes in the past, and it's because it's so technical, and they've pretty much got the movie figured out ahead of time, and they know what they need in the take to fit that hole in the film. And until they get the right thing, they have to keep filming. It will not be good enough.
Well, and I feel like we've talked about that before, because actors get so frustrated and they feel like the directors sometimes don't have any idea what they're doing. They're asking for more takes. They're like, what more do you need from me? I gave you the best performance.
Right. But it's not just about showing an actor do their thing. It's if there was a camera thing, if there was something in the background that is distracting.
Yeah.
Like there are sometimes very specific demands on stuff like that.
Well, but the best example I could think of was in the Australian film that I was shooting. Over the shoulder shots is where you see the most problems, I think, as far as where shit is in the frame, right?
Okay.
And like, I don't know, the whole process of filming a scene is a process. You shoot one angle, the actor's kind of in one position. Maybe they're leaning forward, maybe their hands are on the table, maybe not. In one case, like, the actor's hands were on the table all for the shot, like, of the actor.
Yeah.
Straight on. But the 2 shot, the hands were always in the lap.
It's like scripting.
And I was like, you know what? I felt like over the years, like, I've done less and less takes. Whereas I started doing a lot of takes.
Yeah.
And now I'm like feeling like I need to arc back to where you could do more takes. I mean, that's beside the point, though. I mean, I don't know if Rian Johnson, I don't think they had, because they were shooting on film.
Yeah.
They had a small budget. I doubt they had the chance to be able to shoot a lot of takes for this.
No, but I do think that he was sort of innovating live on set, and he was editing the film as he was shooting it in his head.
Yeah.
And so he was being creative and coming up with cheap and creative solutions to making those moments really hit better in the final film. Like any of his little dream sequences, seeing Emily in the tunnel. Right. There's like this garbage bag motif
that goes shot in reverse.
Yeah, that thing Yeah, where they just pulled it off the camera and through the water, and then they reversed it, so it's like creeping forward and jumps out at you.
At the camera. And they do that all throughout the film, too.
Yeah.
In different
In
moments.
different scenes, they're just like, when he wakes up, they're whipping a garbage bag off of his face.
When
And
that
that's, like, a
first
good
happens
transition.
when that first happens in the movie, that's when I was like, oh, we're dealing with somebody else, somebody who's working on a different level.
Yeah, it's not just literal. Like, he's getting real creative.
He's
with
getting
his
creative in
transitions
there,
and.
yeah. Another,
I keep throwing that word out there, but so few people are that creative.
which
They
is
just
funny
shoot
because
it as it's written.
it strikes me as something so simple.
Yeah,
It's such a simple thing, and a lot of people come off as pretentious when they do it.
Mm-hmm.
His just comes off as natural because
Yeah.
it probably was.
and they're not. The movie does not try to draw attention to.
That.
Ooh, here's the garbage bag again.
Here's the garbage bag shot. Oh my god.
Well, because it's like what he wraps her body in and dumps it in a trunk near the end of the movie. So it's like an important thing.
Yeah.
In his experience, but it's not. It's just a visual motif for the
Right.
movie, and we don't have to worry about it until we see that final shot of the trunk, and we see just her arm dangling out of the garbage bags. It's like, ooh. We know what he's had to go through for all this.
May was a 4-star Roger Ebert review,
Okay.
which is actually why I watched the movie. And it also happened to have Nora Zehetner as a supporting character.
Yeah, she gets her throat cut in that one, right?
It was a nasty one. Which I think no, I don't think
I thought she got
yeah, no, you're right. She
her-
does.
Yeah.
But I think also Anna Faris gets her throat slit in that movie.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of her. Oh,
I think they
okay.
both. It's been a while.
Yeah, I
They
only
both
seen it
die
once.
horribly to knives, if I remember correctly. But it made me wonder if that was how Rian Johnson met Nora Zehetner through that.
Probably. I mean, it's all the same group of people.
Yeah, and Lucky McKee, I wanted to see. He is thanked in Brick.
Yeah.
Of course, this came out a few years after. This was probably done. I'm guessing Rian Johnson was able to raise the money for Brick after May came out.
And like I said, it wasn't a ton of money.
No,
I don't know if he just went to friends and family.
it's probably just 100% friends and family. I mean, hell, he had a relative do the score.
Yeah.
And
That's a
had
good
the
one.
same score for Brothers Bloom and for Looper. Like, of course, John Williams is doing Last Jedi, but I'm sure
That guy's had his time in the sun.
Yeah, no. But I don't. So what does this movie mean for you? Like, what is it? What did it do? Because obviously you're attracted to the detective story.
Yeah, well, I'm attracted to the trappings of the genre. That's what gets me involved. But what's really cool about this story is that, like, the classic dime store novel of the detective, that character, he's super tough and he's super smart and he can
wanna
shoot the
be
wings
him.
off a fly at 100 yards.
You want to be this guy.
Yeah. And that goes for this character too. Like, he's a loner, but as you find out more about him, you understand why he's alone and why he's done what he has done. And by the end of the movie, he's not only had the crap beat out of him like 4 or 5 times, you get to his emotional core. Like, and long story short, Emily was pregnant with his baby, but they had broken up, and she got involved in a weird drug scene, and she ended up killed. But when he finds out that he was the father of this baby, and Emily is the only person he's ever really loved, it's just like
You just
you're
see
gutting
him devastated at the end.
And that's what this story in particular does differently. It doesn't let him be the Superman detective. Like,
Right.
he's good at all that stuff, playing both sides against each other. Well, all 3 sides, between the school administrators and the 2 factions of the gangs. But in this case, you strip everything away, and he's just a guy who's really sad that he doesn't have his girlfriend anymore.
Well, and I mean, he is actually just getting the shit kicked out of him for one reason only, and that's to figure out what happened to her. Well, even though he knows, then he wants to find out the story of why it happened.
Yeah, that's really fascinating about the story, because they lay it out very early on when he finds Emily dead outside the tunnel.
Yeah.
After that, he goes to his friend Brain, who's like his partner in crime, sort of. And
his partner in crime that just gets used through the entire movie.
Yeah, he's not nice to Brain. But Brain likes to help out. He's talking to him, and Brain's asking, well, can you help Emily? Without saying that she's dead, he just says, no, I can't help her. But can you get the straight story and break a few deserving teeth along the way? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I can do that. And that's the rest of the movie. That's all he's trying to do, is get to the top, figure out what exactly happened to her, and take down anybody who was involved. And it's like it's sort of a revenge tale, but it's you see at the end it's really grounded in his love. He's not just out for blood. Like, he's trying to make things right as he can.
I love that it's a high stakes, high scope film that you could have shot for next to nothing.
Yeah.
It's
at a high school and in the suburbs of San Clemente, California.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to take anything away from the cinematography. We unfortunately
it's got a great look.
Unfortunately had to watch a
standard
DVD, the standard DVD that was released.
There's no American Blu-ray.
Look great. It doesn't look great.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Blu-ray, like what they did as far as clean up, as far as the image is concerned, but the Blu-ray doesn't look great.
Can we talk about the jump cuts in this movie?
Sure.
There were a lot of jump cuts, and I didn't. That's not a knock on it. It's the movie's about an hour and 45 minutes long, and it felt a little bit long this time.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it probably half a dozen times before. But there were tons of jump cuts, and I wonder if they were just there as a time saver, and then they decided to make it a repeated pattern throughout the movie, like as he is choking on more and more of his own blood. Mm-hmm. He's kind of getting jump cutted around even more. There are some times early when it is just used as a time jump, when they're close on an alarm clock and it suddenly becomes 3 hours later. That's an old one. It gives it a certain energy. There's even one that I think I remember hearing about on the commentary way back. There's in the Pin, he's walking back down into the basement. Mm-hmm. And when he turns around, he's got black hair and he's wearing his black cloak and he's in a black doorway. He disappears visually completely, and then she fades in. It's like she walks through him, like he's a ghost. And that's obviously a little jump cut, but it's like kind of a surprising one.
That's kind of why I wanted to see. I wanted to see the Blu-ray for that reason, because here the blacks are just crushed.
Yeah.
On this TV in particular, but
hey, you want to buy me a new one?
But I mean, there's so many moments in this where Joseph Gordon-Levitt walks into the basement of Pin's house and can't see anything, dark hallway. Mm-hmm. And not only 2 feet down the hall from him, there's people standing there.
You can't even see him.
Can't see him until the lights come on, and suddenly
it was like that in the theater, though. Like, it was completely
I seem to remember that.
Yeah, because it was. Wait, what's going on? There's all these other guys standing around.
Yeah. Nowadays, it's like you've got,
this TV is giving you a theater authentic experience.
Red cameras can give you, but film can get you that latitude in the darkness too. It's not that video is any different. But nowadays you might not. It depends on who you're. Fincher's not he's not going to crush the blacks. But like I'm on Mr. Robot right now. I feel like the blacks are always crushed. Mm-hmm. It just depends on who.
Is it just sort of a contrasty looking show?
In general, yeah, more. Yeah, more vibrant. More the colors pop a bit more. David Fincher stuff is always very muted and flat.
You were also noting in one scene, like how there was no extra lighting outside of this house. It was completely dark during the party scene. Yeah.
That's just strikes me as a low budget thing.
But I think it worked well because that's the world of film noir. The noir means black.
Right.
That's French for black.
Well, it's realistic too. There's nothing about the way that was lit that was unrealistic. It is how the house was lit. They just found a bright house from outside that they could film.
Yeah, but then in a larger budget movie, they'd be like putting shit all over the yard and
There'd
making
be a
sure you
fucking
could see everything.
balloon light 30 feet above the house.
Right.
You'd be able to see like a strip of grass like a mile away.
And I don't know. I guess maybe I'm a cheapskate or something, but I wonder about big productions like that.
Mm-hmm.
All that energy and money spent setting up lights
to make it unrealistic,
to make it look unrealistic, and to give us something to look at that we're not even supposed to be looking at. Like, why would you want me to see the details of the fucking grass?
Right.
Is it purely an aesthetic thing? Like,
I think
it's
so.
prettier that way.
I think it's an aesthetic thing. It's about Hollywood crafting something that's unrealistic because that's what audiences want to see, according to Hollywood.
Well, audiences are fucking dumb.
I think
I think you should show
benefits to both.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so, but I guess the the thing I would be concerned with is not making sure the movie looks pretty, but showing the thing that needs to be shown.
Mm-hmm. Right.
For this moment in the film, what should we be looking at? Mm-hmm. Do we even go wide to the exterior of the house? In that case, it was because Brendan was running around spying on other people who were leaving the house, so we had to have the deep background to see what he saw, and he was in the foreground, so it had to be fairly wide. But I don't know, just my way of doing things.
One of the other things that attracted me to this movie was the fact that it was shot in San Clemente, California, which is where my dad's side of the family's from. All my cousins, my dad, and all my uncles all went to the same high school that this was filmed at. Which was kind of fascinating to me because you go to San Clemente, which is a very kind of, I don't want to call it right wing, but it's definitely right leaning, conservative Orange County beach city with a lot of surfer dudes and kind of a brash sense of elitism, a little bit. That does not come by in this movie at all.
Well, yeah, it's not part of that world.
Yeah.
Sort of, they're making up their own drug-fueled underworld for this movie.
Well, I think it's kind of funny because it's like Rian Johnson grew up there, and he's presenting this whole side of San Clemente to me, personally, just me.
Just you.
Just, no, and then like, but just like, it just shows me like, no matter what, whether it's Rian Johnson growing up in a beach city, probably doing nerd things with his nerd friends, but crafting these crazy, awesome worlds, outside of the beach.
Yeah.
And
I do not get the sense that this is in any way autobiographical film.
No.
He really got outside of his own experience for this.
But and I just mean that a lot of movies that are made nowadays are very surface, obviously. And if you had a different director doing this, it may not necessarily. It would probably shoot San Clemente in a totally different way. It would be everyone would have a beach body. It would be. Actually, this brings me to my next thing, is that this movie, I feel like, inspired a lot of other movies. Probably the most of which was the assassination of a high school president.
Oh, I did see that one.
And that one had a very similar lead character, who was this kid who was very cool. You kind of wanted to be him, even though he was a little more weak in that movie, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And he was kind of doing the same thing where he was like this sleuth in his school, like trading secrets with teachers, kind of like the ass VP, as they called him, and that's the assistant vice principal. In this one, there's that funny moment in this movie where Joseph Gordon-Levitt is talking to the assistant vice principal, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt's throwing out all these demands and whatever, and he's just not getting what he wants. So he's like, I'm gonna bounce. I'm gonna get out of here. I'll see you at parent-teacher conferences. Which that line just kills me because it's like they're talking about all these serious things. And he's like, I'll see you at parent-teacher conferences.
Yeah, it's one of the few times where it reveals like the adults in the world,
the ridiculousness of what's happening.
Yeah, anytime the grown-ups show up in this movie, it's sort of silly. Like the Pin lives with his mom.
Yeah,
he's got some sort of club foot problem. I'm not sure. He wears a big shoe, whatever that's for.
Right. Well, and before they go upstairs, he says, "Okay, we need to go back to the world up there," or whatever he says.
Amongst the living.
Yeah, amongst the living, which it's funny because it's almost like this whole underworld is treated so massively and so with such high stakes, even though it is actually because there's fucking
people are dying.
People are dying, and it's pretty serious business, but it's still treated as if it's like this small little high school thing.
Well, like when the Pin's mom is going like, "Oh, I guess we don't have orange juice. Would you like apple juice? Here, I'll put it in a funny glass for you." And it's a very quirky. It's almost Wes Anderson style.
No,
it's almost. I think The Brothers Bloom is more Wes Anderson style than this, but it's just the kind of awkward sense of humor that is present in both.
The Wes Anderson style, though, strikes me as far more pretentious. This feels more like it's more having fun.
Sure. Wes Anderson wants everything to look like a storybook for some reason that I will never understand. That's not happening here because they didn't have the budget for it anyway. But just the way that the characters are archetypal, like everybody, I'm so impressed by this movie because you know exactly who each character is and what they stand for within about 15 seconds of meeting them in the movie. And some people might look at that and be like, "Oh, well, that's cheap and everything is two-dimensional." But it's really fast. It's efficient.
And the most successful movies seem to find a way to do that while making it be original.
Yeah.
Whether it be Star Wars and the Joseph Campbell structure, or this and falling, like you say, into giving these archetypes from noir, which have been hammered out for 100 years of filmmaking and storytelling for that matter.
There's like 3 different femme fatales in this movie.
Yeah.
But the comparison to Wes Anderson is like he also works with those archetypes. The way he kind of makes not the same archetypes, obviously, as this. But how, like in the Royal Tenenbaums, everybody wears basically the same costume in the film from beginning to end. They're almost cartoon characters, but they are given human attributes, and it's the same effect. You understand who they are just based on their look and like the first words out of their mouth.
Right.
They stand for an idea.
You don't have to explain to an audience who someone is.
Yeah.
You don't have to waste the time to do that. Because now you can waste time expanding upon it in different ways.
Right. And like I was saying before, I think that Brick does a little something to break down those archetypes. So you're not restricted to that one idea. Like Brendan, he definitely loses his cool by the end of the movie. I'm not sure I want to be him anymore by the end of the movie.
You don't want to have CTE from all the concussions that you've been given?
All the fucking like closed fist punches right to the eye socket. Everybody in this movie, you find out more about them as time goes on. And only a few of them are just plain evil from the start. Even Dode.
Like Megan Good's character?
Megan Good's a pretty bad person.
She's
from
hilarious.
But she's very funny, yeah. She's always got
a lapdog. There's always a lapdog under there.
But
even in the end when she's like crying her eyes out, and then
there's this dude
you think she's being authentic, and then she says, "Okay, you can go tell somebody," and you see somebody just appear out of nowhere that you had no idea was down there. It runs off.
But Dode, who's introduced as basically a fucking hophead who hangs out behind the local diner,
Yeah, he's
Even
such a
he-
pussy. Like he just
yeah.
gets beat up, like slapped around.
But even he is given some depth by the end because you get the sense
Right.
that he also loved Emily.
Yeah.
And he says, like, I would have loved that kid too. And that was the big reveal that she was pregnant, which nobody
Right.
knew up until then. And I believe him. I mean, I think he would have been a fucking scumbag who was high on crack or whatever all day long. But I believe he was sincere.
I still
And
love.
yeah.
I still love seeing Dode for the first time. You know, and he's all acting tough, and then he gets the shit kicked out of him.
Like,
But his
immediately.
buddies are all standing there, like his posse, and they're all just kind of watching this all
Well, they're all-
happen.
well,
And then
they're all,
when
like, high as
Joseph
a kite.
Gordon-Levitt like comes over to like confront them, they're like, "Whoa, dude, just calm down."
Yeah. Oh, I love his line. I got all 5 senses and I slept last night, which puts me 6 up on the lot of you. And that's when they go, "Oh, we don't want to fight, man."
So I guess that would be a good segue into the dialogue of this movie.
All the crazy.
I feel
words.
like I paid a bit more attention to how it was written this time, and I don't know. It didn't strike me actually that there was as much crafted dialogue as I thought there was, which is maybe just the way it was presented though made it. You know, obviously he had them. Everybody's fast talking, on the ball. If you blink, you're gonna miss something.
Yeah, you need to, like, the words they're saying are like a code. And even though I commented when it started, the start of the movie is kept in this shroud. You don't know who anybody is, what they're talking about. We
A
got
lot
Emily.
of names, everything's confusing.
All the names, everything. So you're you're more lost than Brendan is.
But it's feeding you just enough to keep you involved and interested.
Yeah.
I think that if there's any flaw at all from a marketing or film industry professional studio, it would be that I feel like when I'm trying to present this movie to someone else, like if I'm trying to pitch them on it and say, "Hey, you got to watch this movie," I feel like actually most people I've shown it to haven't really received it very well.
Really?
Yeah. Like our friend Matt, I showed him. He was like, all right, kind of lukewarm on it. And some other people just
He
kind
was
of
lukewarm on The Long Goodbye, too.
Well, so was I.
Well, you're both assholes.
But I feel like a lot of people check out early in the movie because
it's a little too confusing to even keep up with.
It does look like a low budget film, at least from the print we're seeing.
I do remember watching this movie with the subtitles on years ago because I didn't want to miss anything. So it became more of a literary exercise.
For you, yeah. How fast can you read?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. It was
I wonder if our
difficult.
experience was a little different because I think my first real hearing about this movie was reading Roger Ebert's review of it.
He gave it 3,
And
I think.
I thought he gave it 4. Like
Oh, I guess I don't remember now.
I thought that he loved the hell out of it. Because I remember the buzz coming out of Sundance about it, and then Focus Features picked it up, and then I feel like we saw it at ArcLight. Is that right?
Maybe I did again.
That's where we did
I
see
saw
it.
it my second time.
And maybe it was over at Century City at that theater before they moved it. But no, maybe it was at Fox with you. I might have actually seen it there with you in the Zanuck Theater.
Yeah. I remember Steve was there, and he worked there at the time.
Yeah, and I had just left, I think, because I left in 2005.
Yeah.
But beside the point. But having seen it in a theater, which is such a different experience, you know, you presented everything, every little sound. Some sounds you miss at home, even if it's just little tiny things like whispers
Or like
dialogue,
the
match lighting, car driving by. That little line of dialogue we hear when the actors are rehearsing on stage, like where they
should
stop.
I actually kiss her now?
Yeah, which is such like an in joke. Like,
well, it's like totally what high school kids do.
Everyone has to deal with that at some point in their life if you're rehearsing anything. Should I actually kiss you? I don't want to overstep boundaries. But like shit like that's the kind of stuff you'd miss if you're watching at home and there's so many distractions.
After the first fight scene of the movie, at which Brendan has just won because he refuses to stay down on the ground.
Yeah. He's
walking away with his hands in his pockets. Some girl's like, "Oh, is there a fight?" And he goes, "Yeah." Like, yeah, you just missed it, stupid.
Any of that, like, I don't know. It's just the dialogue to me isn't actually as noir as we think it is.
It is at times.
It has moments like the Five Senses line.
Yeah. There are some lines in this movie where Ryan was probably cracking up when he wrote it down. He's like, "Oh man, this is gonna be so fucking cool." But shit, I would only be able to do this if we had clips ready to play or something like that. But I really feel Nora Zehetner's, all of her dialogue is very noir-y.
Sure.
Like all of that stuff is just dripping with that flavor.
I guess my what I mean by saying it's not like crafted in a way that's like you said they coin a lot of words, you know. It didn't strike me like that it had coined more words than say Clueless did, you know, for that
not for maybe
audience, but like
not for the common folk to use.
Right.
But I remember when this movie was coming out for critics, they were handing out little papers that had translations for all these different words.
Right. Well, I mean, half this movie is about figuring out, well, what's brick mean? What is pin? What's the pin?
What's the pin? What's
tug?
the symbol stand for?
Yeah, what's tug? Oh, that could be a drink. What's rush? Or what do they call it?
Milk and vodka, which is really gross. I've had that before. On accident, I've had that.
God. So it's kind of like they're almost like dissecting the language themselves in the movie.
And then the whole thing becomes this very complicated puzzle of who did what and when to whom, and whose side is everybody on.
And yet here it is, this small high school in a beach city. Like
it kind of like
that you would never think a movie like this would come out of that kind of place.
This is obviously a heightened...
It's high concept.
It's high concept, but I wonder if somebody in high school watched this, if they would feel like it was accurate. Like, this is how the cliques work. Everybody, the only thing that matters in high school is who you eat lunch with, which group you're with.
All my cousins who were they were in school at San Clemente High School while this was like during the filming of this. Like I think of 2 or 3 of mine were still in school.
Yeah.
They were just kind of indifferent to it. Like they never really came around to it.
Because obviously, like I could
never really figure out why they were the surfing people. Like they were out doing the surfing thing, and
I didn't know anybody who was into the drug trade in high school, though I'm sure I was surrounded by a few. But I guess I still get the feeling that this is what high school students feel high school is like. They don't care about the parents or the teachers or whatever. Everybody thinks they're a very important piece of their town, and they've got it all figured out. At least some people think that. I don't know, just a different angle on the high school life.
Well, I mean, since other movies have kind of spawned out of this one, whether or not they were inspired by it or not, maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I feel like there's probably still enough room to do another larger movie or something in the vein of this. I guess Stranger Things it's not noir in that sense, but it's certainly kind of, the kids have become like detectives of their own.
Yeah.
But they're like more realistic.
Everybody's trying to figure out what this shit is happening in their town.
It's a little less stylistic, but and I guess it's to be honest, it's gone back as far as high school movies have gone on. There's always some kid trying to figure out something or something. Veronica Mars is a huge one.
Yeah.
I almost forgot about that. And I know I loved it. I'm pretty sure you did. Right?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
The last season was kind of like iffy for me, but the movie was great. I love the movie.
Well, the last season was kind of that. kind of escaped and went down a different route entirely because it was
sort of like
a different network.
Yeah, it was like split into
CW.
half seasons
Was
or
it
something.
CW? Well, I can't remember if they were all CW or not. I don't even remember at this point.
I don't know. Well, it was WB at first, right? Or was it WB gone years ago?
I think it was at the end of WB, and then it became
Okay.
CW. Yeah, something stupid like that.
I don't know.
But I mean, that proved alone that if you get the right lead character, you can really craft like a pretty awesome show in that setting.
Mm-hmm.
Veronica Mars, I would argue, was a bit more. I hate saying realistic because it's not, but it was more realistic by comparison to this movie, which is more stylized. Veronica Mars wasn't as stylized, but it still had the cliques and the groups.
Right.
You had the biker gang. You had Veronica and her.
It was
her
more
father who was in.
It was more realistic in the sense that she actually went to school occasionally,
Right.
and she worked with her dad, who was a real private detective.
Yeah.
And in this case, he's just a guy who knows some people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you haven't seen this movie, you absolutely should. And
Definitely
try and
worth-
give it a bit more chance. Like if you're struggling through the first few scenes, turn your volume up.
Turn the subtitles on, so you can see what the sentences are.
Tell your
They'll
mom.
make more sense.
Tell your mom to get out of the house.
Yeah.
And lock the animals out. Leave the baby in the other room. The baby will be fine.
For 2 hours,
Actually,
the baby will be fine.
Don't listen to me. I didn't say that. Just watch the movie.
Yeah. And I guess how does this movie relate to Star Wars? Meaning,
How does
we
it
haven't
relate
seen,
back to Star Wars?
We haven't seen the movie clearly, but
Well-
how do we go from Brick to Star Wars?
I think in the same sense, like we were saying with, like I said, the difference between Wes Anderson and Rian Johnson to me is that Wes feels like all that shit is so important to him to have it that way that it feels pretentious in the way that it's presented. The way Ryan's filmmaking feels to me, and I'm sure it's every bit as important to him, it doesn't come off that way. It comes off as this is a filmmaker who's having fun and a hell of a time making the movie and doing it and just like in a way that just feels fun. And that to me is something that strikes me as like Spielberg did. When in his filmmaking, you felt like they were just having a cool, fun time because he loved the movie.
Yeah,
he loved the movies.
There's genuine
that he was
excitement
making.
behind it.
Genuine, not to take anything away from Wes Anderson. It's just a totally different style. When I watch his movies, I get the feeling that everyone who's in the movie also feels that they love the style behind it, which is kind of the problem in my
You think
mind.
it gets in the way of the movie?
I think it gets in the way 100%. And
what are you expecting from Star Wars? Because I have not even seen the trailer. They played it before Thor Ragnarok.
Did you close your eyes?
I averted my eyes, so I heard
Did you
the
listen to
trailer. I mean, I couldn't even. You can't block out the sound of a theater.
Well, Rian
your
Johnson
fingers.
loves you because I think he was saying, what's the hashtag wait for 8?
Yeah.
Which I totally get, but I feel like the trailers I've seen from the movie, the only thing I feel about them is that they tell you absolutely nothing.
That's good.
That's what it feels like. I feel like there's
Does it look fun?
huge.
Because this is the second installment. This is supposed to be the dark one, like Empire Strikes Back.
It seems dark,
All right.
but to be honest, I didn't like the trailer.
Okay.
But I don't think that's going to have anything to do with the movie itself.
Yeah.
I think that's
animals.
I think that's a case of they had to edit a trailer together without showing a lot of things, and this is what you get. I'm actually kind of expecting I'm expecting a lot of surprises in the form of like something like a Yoda, which was probably, I don't know how much Yoda was presented in the trailers back in the day.
Right.
Probably quite a bit because they didn't care about that shit.
But yeah,
back then.
He lands on this swamp planet, and he's accosted by a little fucking Muppet.
Yeah, which if you had seen the first Star Wars, you would not have expected that to end up being one of your favorite characters.
Well, he was like comic relief too. He's hitting R2 with his cane and stuff.
So I'm kind of expecting something like that we just don't know.
What are those little gerbil things in the new one?
The gerbil things.
Guinea pig things?
Yeah.
I forget what they're called. Porgs. Maybe they're actually a vital part of Star Wars lore now. Like maybe they stand for something great, like Yoda.
I have yet to. I'm waiting to see on that one. Porgs we can talk about later, but I mean, because it was always mind blowing to me was like I loved Return of the Jedi, and it's a lot of people consider it the worst of the three, the originals, and yet I wonder if I love it because the Ewoks didn't bother me because I was a child, but it seemed to bother a lot of adults. Back in the day, like, what is this fucking Jim Henson?
Trying to sell
what is this
toys?
Jim Henson bullshit? You know.
Yeah.
And for me, like the Porgs are kind of like that, but that strikes me as like an extremely Rian Johnson thing to have in there because of his love for like Japanese culture. You know,
what does that have to do with anything?
Well, the Porg to me looks like something that you would see in an anime or something where you get girls. Like girls going, oh my god, so cute.
Okay,
you know what I mean? Like all the cats that have their ears tucked in. You know, that kind of thing where you just get, just like I could just imagine that being a huge part of the whole thing behind it.
Okay. Honestly,
I have no idea what the hell I'm saying right now, but.
We never do.
You just asked my opinion on what it could be.
Yeah.
The Porgs could be my favorite thing.
I hope all of them get killed by the end of the movie.
They're kind of like tribbles.
Yeah.
From what I gather.
With faces.
Have you seen any of the shots? Have you seen the shot with the Porg on the Millennium Falcon?
I saw a still of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's been everywhere.
Right. You can't avoid everything.
No, I can't. I have nothing else to say besides go see this movie if you haven't.
Yeah.
Die in a Fire.
See it in high definition if you can.
See it in 4K if you can. See it in film projected like it was actually shot and meant to be presented to you.
Yes. In a theater.
I
wonder if he'll come back around to the New Bev and show his own movies like Tarantino does.
I don't know. Ryan, come show your movies at the New Bev again.
Or just like come to my house. I'm in Van Nuys, but it's safe.
That's not going to happen.
Come on. He's like...
It's Van Nuys.